the Public Works budget. It says roads, but it is all of Public Works, right? We're doing.
Roads is its own,
It's its
parks
own.
is separate, yeah.
So we're not doing parks today. So we're just doing the roads budget for fiscal year 23-24. Let me turn it over to the clerk. Would you like to start us off?
Sure. Or Jessica, either way, we've met and we went through every line and discussed them and adjusted them and came up with what our revenue was. We'll just start by saying almost all grants are tracked outside of their budget. So if it's grant money, it's outside with the exception of Pine Creek, Pinehurst
and West
and West Fork Pine Creek. And they are in there, but they're reimbursable and so.
So the rest of the grant income shows up.
They're in grants. They're not part of the budget.
West Fork Pine Creek Bridge and the.
Yep, the
Pinehurst.
bridge bundle, so
Yeah,
Pinehurst,
okay,
West
those-
Fork, and, Pine Creek.
You'll see those in there and all.
And
Okay.
it's crick.
Creek,
Where I'm from.
Yeah, those are that bundle, okay.
potato, potato.
So for revenue, again, we do not budget for taxes or interest or anything like that. So we put in where am I at? Oh, why didn't that transfer over? Well, it should have. Dang. I didn't print it right. Well, I will get you a new one of the revenue. Basically, we budget the same things that we did the year before, other than I don't know what my revenue is, but I could have them, I'll have them run one for me and then we'll come back to it. But you guys have questions for Jess, so we'll do revenue after. Okay. And so we'll just go into the road budget. So road salaries, the first one is Jessica, everything is budgeted at a 5% plus. These guys last year, was it last year they went to the scholarship program?
In 2021, we started a scholarship program. This will be the first year that we actually have people that have achieved the certification. So this fiscal year, the way that the matrix works and the policy that supports the matrix is that wherever the employee is on our pay matrix, depending on their longevity and what grade level they are and what category they're in, road scholar certification will equal a $1 an hour raise to whatever they're currently making. And so we put in for who has achieved road scholar or will achieve road scholar by the start of fiscal year. The way our pay matrix is designed and our policy that supports it is that if they are even one class short and don't make it, if we have not budgeted for it, then they must wait until the start of the following fiscal year. We want to be able to control our budget when it comes to wages. So,
Okay, now what's Road Scholar and what benefits does it have to?
so Road Scholar is through the state of Idaho. The program is administered through LTAC, and it is it's standardized classes. So there are 7 core classes and I believe 4 electives that the employees, if they want to get through the program, they do. And it's different things about the jobs that they might do. There's a math course on, math for road computations and things like that. And then there's some different things about roadway materials and different applications and some different electives that they can take. There are some things also that are going to kind of help them. There is one that's mandatory, is an effective communications course that they have to take. And so there are so many credits, and once they have achieved those, then they are awarded a Road Scholar certification, and that's recognized throughout the state of Idaho. What that does is it does a few things. Number one, education for employees is always a plus. Number 2, it shows other agencies that we're progressively moving forward. And it's recognized across the board through all local highway jurisdictions in the state of Idaho. And the third thing is it gives us extra points on our certain grant applications through LTAC. So what we did was we made it optional For our employees, we didn't want to make it mandatory. We had a pretty good group of them be interested and work their way through the program. So this will be our first year that we actually have Rhodes Scholars on our staff.
And with that, with some of the classes, because I had that up in our department, like one of the classes that's mandatory is pavement maintenance, and that also shows you how to get the most of life out of the asphalt roads, the paved roads, how to go and measure for what is coming, like in the future, help us budget for any problems that we will potentially have in roads. It was very educational, and most of the classes that we are taking do pertain to the job we're doing. I've learned a lot from taking those classes.
And one of the biggest takeaways is the extra points you get there qualifying us for our
They're
money.
huge because a lot of times we've missed it by a point or two. Somebody's just eked us out a little bit, and you look into how they scored versus how we scored. And a lot of the biggest difference was Rhodes Scholars on staff.
So did any of the guys out there actually working and with the equipment and with CDLs, did they pass this? Did they take?
Yes,
this?
yes.
There's 5 total that are Rhodes Scholars right now.
I had 6.
One is, I'm clarifying that with her. I have 5 for sure.
We budgeted for
For
it
6.
because there was a credit number that was in dispute,
Oh,
so we
they
put it
haven't
in
gotten it
there.
yet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
So I just sent an email out to Nancy, who's in charge of that, to clarify that these are the 5 that I have for sure
Okay.
that have made it. And on that 6th one question,
Okay.
so
Now, are those 5 people, are they the head guys down at the other departments, or did they take those?
So the majority of the supervisors are enrolled. We had one that opted to not enroll just because he's retiring this year, and he wouldn't have had time to get going on it. But
one of them is. supervisor.
one supervisor is a Rhodes Scholar. He's already gotten his, he's already checked the box.
Mhm.
And the rest are just our general workers.
Okay, why don't we make that mandatory for our
We can, when we put it in, when we did the matrix back in 2021, it was something new. We weren't sure, what was gonna happen with it. We've got a pretty good mix of, staff that's been here for a long time or staff that's ready to retire versus like the middle of the road in their 40s, a couple of younger people. And at that point, we really got kind of a mixed review as to how serious people were going to take it, because they have to pass the class with an 80% to get credit for that. And we didn't want to just make them all take it and not do well and have us paying for their classes. And so when we started, what we did was we made it optional. It's really taken off. Employees have to be an employee for a year before they're eligible, because we don't want to just start expending money on classes if they're going to just leave. So, they've passed their probationary period at the 1-year mark. And so then we feel safe to start investing in these classes that we pay for them. Some are free. We've worked out the most frugal way to get through the program. But so that's something that we never considered at the time because it was newer. And this is our first cycle getting through. And so, down the road, we could make that mandatory, but it would require revising some policies in our department.
And next year, we have the majority of the guys next year will be there. A lot of them are missing one class, and those classes don't come out till mid-September.
Okay.
So they won't make the cutoff. So there's about 4 people that aren't enrolled out of the whole road department. And some of that is because they haven't been here long enough to be enrolled.
The gentleman that you guys looked at today, did he have, Mr. Chairman, did he have the Rhodes Scholar program?
No, because he didn't come from a road district. So it's only available to the local highway jurisdictions. So county, highway district, city workers, the local highway jurisdiction. So just because somebody has a CDL working in a different, he's newer to our department. So he has not met the 1-year mark for us to become enrolled. But we talked about it, and he will be enrolling when he's eligible.
Because that would make sense, because if he's going to be a lead person, I think that, he should have this
Sure.
should be able to do this. And was there somebody else down there that has this? And that-
So we're gonna have one man standing. We're losing half of we have 4 people, we're losing 2. We're only gonna be retaining 2. So the other gentleman that still works down there, who's not gonna, the one that we decided would be the supervisor. He is enrolled in the Rhodes Scholar, but he has not finished.
So, they basically followed their 5% increase across the board for all employees, plus the $1 an hour if they have their Rhodes Scholar. So. Alright, so basically they went from 1.275555 to 1.4. Just for salaries and benefits went up from 706,000 to 783,000. And then, let's see, we went up in registration and education, and I'm assuming part of that is because of the Rhodes Scholar.
It's the Rhodes Scholar, but it is also, historically, we have not offered our supervisors any type of supervisor training. We expect them to be the supervisor and perform all the duties of a supervisor and be accountable for that. But we have not offered them the training for them
Okay.
to properly do that. So I put a little extra in there. So we'll be training supervisors.
Now, real quick, before we jump forward, the temporary wages, we're at 50%. So why, and we're asking for more money.
So the reason that the more money was asked is the 5% difference. We were never able to hire the full amount of temps. We've always, we've been down on temps. It's a lack of applicants is
For
what
the
that ended up
winter
being.
time.
Winter temps, yes.
Okay.
We don't currently hire summertime temps.
Yep, exactly.
And it was just lack of applicants.
Okay.
And the only increase was that projected 5%.
Okay, shop supplies, shop tools and supplies, I should say, went up, from 18,000 to 21,000. That's because they're reaching 100% already. They had 3 months to go, and, as we know, in every department, shop and office supplies have gone up significantly. Heat, we're like not using a whole lot of heat right now, but we're also not in the summer months, so we only wasted 1,000, hoping that would do it. We actually went down on telephone because we've saved money there. Electricity, I kept the same. Waste fees the same. Fuel, diesel, we know that had gone up, but it's also now come down. It's cheaper than regular fuel now. But they do use a whole lot more diesel than they do unleaded, so we did bump that up. They have more diesel fueled trucks, I guess.
Yeah.
Right now, right?
Yep.
So, that was kind of a swag at where they're at. When I ran it, I just divided it by the number of months that I had so far, times it by 12, and that's what I came up with. And we are obviously down on unleaded fuel, so I basically did the same thing. Lubricants, we went down on because we weren't that far. But if you look back historically, we were the year before, so we might be just using up some excess supplies this year and we'll need to buy again.
A lot of times we'll do
purchased.
bulk purchase of lubricants, rather than just purchase little bits at a time. We do that with things like our culverts, we'll do like a once a year purchase or a bulk purchase. And historically, that's how those types of items have been purchased in our department.
And the person who normally does order the lubricants is out on medical leave, so that's why nothing's been being purchased out of that yet, because he's the one who purchases. So when he returns back to work, that will be purchased, because he purchases for all 4 districts. So.
And then vehicle repairs, we've gotten some new rigs, which cut down on the very expensive old rigs that we retired. So.
Yep,
you
and
see a
vehicle repairs is for our light. We have a separate line item for the heavy.
benefit.
Yeah, heavy vehicle maintenance.
Yes. So hopefully they won't use all that. I kept the budget the same even though they're low, but now we're in the summer months and using some of those things a lot more than we were in the winter, so. Heavy vehicle maintenance, that we did go up because we do have a lot of those and we do have some old ones and they require a lot of maintenance. So.
They do. This has been an exceptional year for breakdowns for us. It's something that I've talked about in our department head meetings throughout the winter season and coming into it. It's just the beast of the older equipment. While we are going to be getting some new sand trucks in, the repair costs haven't just been for the sanding trucks. They've been for, our older graders that we own, some of our mowing equipment, our sweeper. It's just kind of across the board. And every year the equipment gets older and older that's in our fleet. And so, Tammy and I talked and I'd like to see an increase in that line.
You had that blower truck go down this year. That
Yes,
was very
yeah.
important that
Yeah.
I see that.
Yeah, I did decrease physicals and drug testing.
Mhm.
I decreased legal fees. It comes up in every budget is why do we need to budget for legal fees? Because we have the prosecutors and I kind of wanted the same thing, but occasionally we have to go out for services, but I don't know.
That's one of those line items for us that is budgeted for each year and it goes unused each year. And so Tammy and I kind of talked about not eliminating that line, but just bringing it down a little bit.
What about the 4 or 5 lines above that where we're at 386% on building and fixtures?
Yeah, I have that circled. What happened there? That's great.
So that one is interesting and Tammy and I have been working a little bit on that one. That one is that is the sand shed and Tammy and I were gonna work to
I
move
moved
that out of that line.
I did move it.
Oh, okay, yeah, so that money's been moved.
I moved it to, capital. So and I don't show that in this capital. Yeah, not a new one since then currently, but, I moved the shed and what was the other thing? I moved 2
Fuel
things.
pumps.
The fuel pumps, service fuel pumps. Those are capital expenses and they just threw them into
Okay.
building and that's not building.
Yeah.
Those were
$5,000.
purchases prior to the beginning. It was during this fiscal year, but it was prior to the beginning of
I get
that year. And so, when Tammy and I met, she said those really need to belong in another line. And so,
So you moved them to.
yeah, for
capital.
auditing purposes.
The
she moved
capital
those out.
expense, if we're gonna do a capital expense, we need to say what we're gonna buy, right?
Correct.
We can't just lump it in and say, well, I wanna buy $100,000 worth of stuff. When you say I wanna buy, these 3 items are probably 100,000, these 2 items.
Right.
That's when you have a budget for it. They didn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
that
Yeah,
was
no
one of
budget.
those things, those 2 things, and that was kind of an interesting time, before any of us came into our seats that we sit in now.
Okay,
That was surplus money, that they had decided that that's what that was going to be spent on.
okay.
And so that was spent before any of us came to these positions.
They asked the other commissioners, they talked about it, but
So the $100,000 that were capital heavy equipment, what is that? Are we buying something this year? Are we questioning the 100,000?
Yes, so that's interesting. I'm gonna bring you guys back to the LATCF purchase of the sand trucks. So, we worked how to make 3 into 4, and I talked about where I was gonna take it from my budget to make that payment. However, where we didn't get with that is that money will not be spent out of this fiscal year budget because that overage can't be paid for until the trucks are ready for delivery, which will not be this fiscal year. So Tammy and I decided we need to make that line item show up in next year's budget.
Okay, okay.
Mhm. So unused money
Still
this
paid
year.
for from
Yeah,
the other fund.
correct,
That's showing up in next year's budget,
correct.
so that it's,
Yeah, so the purchase was approved already this year, but, we're just not.
The money at the moment.
Yeah.
And same way with capital light vehicles, you have,
So capital light vehicles, that's our pickup purchase every year,
pickups.
2 pickups. Yep, and we were sitting at $80,000 every year previous. This year, we obviously, we'll revisit, that blew out of the water
Okay.
and we'll never see 80,000 for 2 pickups again. So we have to budget properly for that.
you could sell them yours for 80,000.
Yeah, why not?
It's red.
They'll run for another 200,000 or 300,000 miles.
Okay, so moving on, we've pretty much stayed the same. Spray chemicals and, we talked about that, we also have that in the lead budget, but this budget, they use it for spraying the sides of the highway.
This is for spraying, the weed spraying of our right of way. We do not physically do the spraying. But because it's for right of way spraying, it is the chemical is purchased out of our department because it benefits our road right of ways. But the spraying is done through the weeds department.
So the contractor that we hired in weeds will actually be applying it. And the road department would actually buy it. We're still early in the season, mid-season now, but I haven't
She's still
seen
got
any
lots.
invoices from her yet, so.
That's
Yeah,
I
why,
don't know
that's
what
true.
I've been doing.
Oh, she's, got an update of what she's accomplished and,
So
so
they'll probably be spending that, I'm assuming.
we're trying to get as much work out of her this year as possible, so.
Yeah, we've seen great progress this
Good.
year.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did we already explain the administrative cost?
Admin costs are the ones that come back to current expense for my department doing their payroll
Okay,
and benefits, HR. It comes back to support the prosecuting attorney, everybody that served in current expense that provides services to other departments shares in that because it comes back to current expense.
so how do we do that figure?
We do a budget JV at sometime after the budget, is approved and move that money. So it's always done at the end of the year. Then we have the sanding materials and all 4 yards. And I questioned that. I lowered it to 20,000. Actually, I was gonna not budget for it, but, I did put it back in after Justin and I talked about it.
Mhm.
That the grade of rock that was purchased last year at the higher cost. The materials were at higher cost, but that was a clean gravel instead of a dirty gravel.
So the cost, my understanding was twice as much, rather than just a hair over, $10 a ton. It was $20 a ton. And I verified that with the previous public works director, because I wanted to make sure I looked at the quantities that we ordered were the same exact quantities we ordered previous, but why was it twice as much? And the purpose for that was to use it as chips for chip sealing last year and to use up the back stock of our dirtier sanding material for the roads to complete last year's road sanding. And so while we still do have some rock, it is the cleaner rock that we would be using for chipping for future projects. And so we still do need to purchase our sanding material for this year.
so all those blank areas, I'm sorry, are because we haven't purchased them yet.
Right, we are
Okay.
right now, I've called and getting 3 bids on our rock right now, sanding material. So when we have those,
And the
We will
sanding
have that.
material is another one of those where it's purchased once a year.
Yeah.
Normally it's done in September, because it's an operation for us to haul it. And so, we have to kind of schedule that. And so we do it. We make sure that the purchase is done at the end of fiscal year, but then the hauling will actually happen the start of next fiscal year before winter time. So it's after our project season. And that's why our timing works out that way.
I had the same questions. I answered that.
Okay, and then down to signing. signing, we budget for that every year, and some years we put up more, some years we don't, according to Jess. Most of our signs do need replaced. They lost their reflective capability.
So signing is for all of the signs on our roughly 375 miles of roadway. That's for stop signs, yield signs, mile marker signs, you know, street signs. It's a lot of signs. And so 2,000 doesn't go very far.
Yeah.
Every couple of years, we're eligible to apply for a sign grant through LTAC. And
Is that coming up? in
yes,
meeting?
yep, we're gonna be applying for that. And so, you know, we'll get that, and the amount could be upwards of 20,000. Sometimes it's less. It's kind of a tiered award that you get. And so when that happens, we do try to purchase, you know, some of the signs that we've kind of let go because they do, you know, lose their reflectability. You know, stop signs, certain signs, you know, have to be so reflective, and we actually have a way to test that. So it's important for us to stay compliant with our signs.
Okay, so that amount probably pays for the gap in the grant that you have to come up with. Is that
Yes,
basically it?
yep, and we stretch it, and a lot of times we just find ourselves like not replacing signs that need to be replaced, you know, unfortunately. But the price on the signs have gone up significantly since COVID. That's where we really saw the turning point. And so, you know, we would like to see an increase in that this year.
And people like to steal the signs. So then we're replacing stolen stop signs.
Mhm.
We've replaced one stop sign in the same place
Using them for
a few
target practice
times,
too.
Yeah.
and then finally this one is staying, but the guys have gotten a little smarter how to trick people from being able to get them off, so. Yes, people like to shoot them. They think they're something to target
Mhm.
practice at, and so then we have to replace them.
Mention certain neighborhoods where the
Yeah.
practice probably occurs more often.
So then we have striping. Striping is, we just left it in there. That's done in the summertime, so we're not gonna see anything there yet. And they alternate, like going up the Coeur d'Alene River, they do one year, and then the next year they do the other side, and it's not the whole thing, it's
Mhm.
chunks. And they
So-
do the same thing on the Joe.
Yep, on the Joe. So this will be our striping year for the Joe.
And you think it's gonna be around 15 grand for the striping for the Joe area?
So there's two lines. So there's the striping line, and then the next one, the subcategory of that is it's titled as Coeur d'Alene River striping. So the striping line with 15,000 is for all of our other striping. You know, that's gonna be for, Silver Valley Road is a big one that we stripe, and then just some other areas, you know, different sections. Each year we pick a different section to hone in on. This year we're gonna be more in the vicinity of Kingston. That needs some attention. And then the next line, which is the Coeur d'Alene River striping, we have a $50,000 budget for that. We'll do the most we can with that. I have not gotten a bid quite yet on that, but we'll spend the whole 50,000.
So you bid that out?
That'll be something, well, you know, what we'll do is I'm gonna reach out to a couple because I'm not going to exceed that line item. So under 50, you don't have to bid it out, but I do like to get a few quotes on that. I like to reach out to a couple companies, and some of what's gonna make our decision is who is available to stripe in that area this year. So,
And then we went down to crushed rock base. And we haven't spent much in there, but there's a big need for it, because there's some money in there.
yep, and we haven't done our major purchase yet, so.
So the next one is that is of concern is the county projects one, and that one includes the tunnel.
Tunnel 34.
34.
Yep, tunnel 34. That one's interesting. I mean, that one's at 567%. That one, so I've been working with Tammy. We did receive $100,000 check from LTAC. It came in last fiscal year and was deposited and put in. And what happened is it never made its way back to show that was credited to that expense. Yeah. And so Tammy and I are working to just make sure that all of our numbers are the same and it shows where that came, because LTAC did give us $100,000 emergency funding grant for that.
It does call that out too, in it.
And so, so we did use that. And then what we ended up, and it was an emergency, we just had to do it, we had to spend it, but we are still waiting for $100,000 from the RAC grant that we were awarded in 2019 that never funded, due to several issues with the Forest Service, with turnover of staff, their RAC committee, everybody that manages the RAC there. So now they've built up their RAC team. We've revisited. That money is still set aside for Shoshone County for Tunnel 34. So when that funds, that will go into this to offset that money that was spent. So it's not as bad as it looks right there at 567
Receive all our
percent.
So
reimbursements.
it did go, the 100,000 did go into the road department last year.
Okay. So it's just a matter of moving now from where it was. Right.
Well, we can't move it now, it's closed.
That's the problem so the
Can't
funding
move it,
came
right?
in.
It went
Even
under
last
fund
And then the work was done after the start of fiscal year, early the start of this fiscal year. And so, it shows up at 567%, but we have actually gotten reimbursement for that.
100,000, but anyway. Yeah. So, okay, and then, contract and engineering fees. We went from 23,000 up to 35,000. We're at 123%. Do you want to talk about that?
So that one's interesting. We don't have a county engineer. We're in the process of RFQ and we'll have a roster selected by early next month, and that'll come, across your agenda. What we're seeing is more need for engineering consults. We have so many bridges in, and in the funding that comes in with the bridges, they do LTAC vets, and they bring on consultants for bundles of bridges through the Leading Idaho Local Bridge Program. And so while that company, whoever it might be, and we're dealing with a couple different ones on ours, David Evans and Associates, and then HMH also has a bundle. While they do the design and they oversee the construction, things come to us to look at and review. Decisions need to be made at our level. And when the design engineer is asking us to make a call that we're not comfortable with, that's when we need to use our county engineer for that. So normally we have 1 or 2 bridges that we're working on at a time through federal aid. Right now we have 9 bridges through Leading Idaho Local Bridge and 3 bridges in federal aid right now. So we are anticipating the need to use more consulting through engineering, so we can keep these projects moving forward. One thing that we are seeing is with the growth in the area and the majority of the land, the flat land that's been developed, we're seeing, more things going uphill. With the influx of like the building permits and things like that, we see an influx in our department with the approach permits. All approaches have to be done to code and signed off on. We've had a few that have had to be reviewed by legal because, there's been a dispute. Whereas, 5 years ago, we would have maybe 5 approach permits through, per year come through, and they were very cookie cutter, and you could sign off on them. Now we're seeing multiple come in a week that are complicated that, we really need some engineering determination on that. And so we're just seeing that, and it's like the other departments, we're just seeing more of it, and we just have to plan for it.
It's minimal, but we're sure getting a lot of aid and bridges.
Yes,
So-
yeah, the return on, with the
What
no
we're getting.
match is amazing, yeah.
So when we do pay these engineers, we're reusing personally for our county, that comes out of that amount.
Correct. When we use general engineering services. So if it's a funded project like Leading Idaho Local Bridge or any of the safety grants that have come through, things like that, those will not reflect in the roads budget. Those will be out of a separate grant, and their engineering is paid. Now, if I decide that Public Works needs to bring in the county contracted engineer, then that portion would come out of this line
Okay.
here. So, we try to be very careful to keep the county engineering line separate than any of the contracts for engineering.
Okay, on the DP new development, that is what BJ does, and that's providing services for network and computer programming and access and that kind of thing. He is over, you guys went with a new solution or something this year?
So this year was our first year going live. We went live at the start of fiscal year with a new cost accounting program. I think we are one of the only departments that doesn't use computer arts for our cost accounting. Just because we have different requirements and arts was not able to support what we need to complete our road and street report for what state of Idaho needs from us at the end of the year. So we went with WinCams and we got everything all done, and this is our first year going through.
So the next one is down to leased equipment, and we do have a couple of leases still in place, and we have one that should be rolling off. And that one, they plan to return it and lease a new one. So we're using the 23,240 that would not be there. Plus an extra 40,000 for that lease that will go in there, and that's why we're not.
And that's part of where,
We're back up.
that's part of where the capital purchase, for heavy, went up. We took it out of our lease line because moving into this fiscal year that we're currently in, we had not been aware that we would be awarded funding for purchase of sand trucks. We thought we were going to have to lease them. So, try to lease them. So we put that in our budget for the possibility of lease this year. Whereas once we were awarded the funding, we did not need that. We didn't expend that this year. So, we didn't ask for that next year. And so we moved that off of there, lowered the ask amount, the request amount, and asked for an increase to fulfill the purchase of the sand trucks.
I had a question on the new communication equipment. Are we purchasing other radios? We do have a maintenance on repair on communication budget before. Are we
So
purchasing new equipment?
the new communication equipment goes to put new radios into some of the newer equipment that comes into our fleet. We do get the 2 new pickups per year.
Mhm.
And so we have to account for the radios and the CBs, and to get that all outfitted for anything that we can pull off of something going out that's still workable and usable, we'll put in. We don't need to purchase new for everything that goes in. But that,
Probably the
that's
sand trucks too. You're gonna have to
Mhm.
put all radio equipment
Correct.
because you got how many? 4 of those coming?
4 of those coming, yes.
And you don't have 4 trucks that are going out. So-
No. I mean, we might let something go, but in our department, you'll find that we don't surplus the equipment until it's dead. We use it because we're always under equipment, and so we will continue to use it.
And data processing, is that through?
That's BJ. Both of those are BJ.
Yeah,
This
that
is
one's
up
DJ.
because
So
of the new
the
stuff this
DP, the DP new development, that is actually a mix of our service contract and maintenance contract with our software program that we have, our WinCams. And then, the data processing, we normally put BJ in there. So that one we have spent more on, not only for all of the work that's gone into implementing WinCams, but also we did have to purchase new computers for each of the shops to support the new fuel pump system. And then BJ had to get those all online
That's right.
and programmed. So that's why that line is up.
And who do you use for the fuel system? Do you use the same ones the airport?
City Service Falcon,
Okay.
is that who you use? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And do you have somebody out there that knows how to run the card machine and everything?
Yeah, so we don't, ours doesn't operate off of a card. And so ours is just the keypad, and then we program it with our codes, and
So you don't have a MasterCard?
No.
you put in there and, okay.
no, ours is set up a little bit differently.
It's a good try.
Yeah, I know.
I know, it's a good try.
Figured that one out.
Nice try.
one.
Yeah.
So Jess and I did talk about the need for road department to invoice, if you will, all the other departments for the fuel that they use, and we've talked to the
Mhm.
departments as, I've met with them in budget, so the sheriff's on board, we're gonna see that happen.
And historically, we have done that at the end of the fiscal
Right.
year. Tammy and I had talked a little bit about maybe if we look at moving forward, doing that twice a year. So when we go into budget prep, we kind of have an idea what they've used for, the first half of the year. So we're not flying in blind,
Yeah.
because really, we don't do it with all of the other departments, but we have the fuel pumps at each of our shops. And so solid waste has their own diesel
Mhm.
access, but they don't to unleaded. So their pickups that take unleaded, they will go to the Smelterville shop, they will punch in their equipment code, and then they'll fill up there. Then we track that at the end of the fiscal year. We invoice them for the fuel used.
Mhm.
We do that with fire mitigation. We do that with planning and zoning. We do that with disaster services. Some departments utilize that and some don't. I know the assessor's office used to use that.
Mhm.
Now they just have cards and fill up at the gas station or something. They don't utilize us.
Is it cheaper to use yours?
Yeah, what's the
It,
advantage?
it really depends. I mean, back in the day, it used to be a little bit cheaper. Now it's just real close. I mean,
Yeah.
we're under slightly, but it's not much, and so, we can kind of look at that and track
When you
what the
guys
pump
buy
price has been.
large quantities, so whatever the rate is that day, it may go up and may go down over the life of that fuel that's in there.
Mhm. And I don't know why, some of the other departments stopped utilizing our pumps. I don't know if it was accessibility issues. In the wintertime, it's a little more difficult because oftentimes we have to have the fuel truck come and fuel us up twice because we're running hard with our pickups. And so to be sourcing that out to, the other departments becomes difficult. Also, our facilities are locked. And so I know that became an issue having, 20 extra keys out. Not that everybody's not trustworthy, but it's just, then you have so many keys out, that it becomes an issue of, people not locking the facilities back up and some different things like that. So some food for thought, with the different departments and where they get their fuel and how they get it.
Yeah, some of the discussions that have come up through budget, thought, well, maybe it'd be nice if we had a keypad entry to get in, and then you wouldn't have any keys out, you just have the code and you change it on a quarterly basis or something to catch anybody that left, but they do that, like down in Kootenai, to get into the sheriff's office and stuff, you have to have a code. That might be a way to avoid that and make it so that it's easier access for
But we don't have a
everybody.
countywide policy on where you get your fuel.
No.
No.
Okay.
So the next three items are, the Pine Creek bridges and the Pinehurst Bridge, that bridge bundle. So you see all the expenses, and when I give you back the revenue, you'll see the revenue that we've gotten into. Actually, you can see it on the one I gave you, because it is on there.
What's the capital projects that's got a negative?
Oh, I haven't got that far yet.
Okay. And then rental equipment, are we getting to that? What do we do with rental equipment, 5,500?
Capital,
What do
you
we
have a
rent?
negative?
Let me look here.
No.
Item 8130000.
Oh, rental equipment. So that's if they have to rent something.
Yeah, that's if we have to rent something that
Like a lift
we
or
don't
whatever.
have, or a crane, or, anything that we would have to rent. That comes out of that particular line item. And we like to keep something in there. You can see, we've never, the
Never
last couple
touched it
years, we've
last
never, yep. And so sometimes we will need it, sometimes we don't. It's nice to have that there in the event that we do have something come up and we need to rent.
Okay.
And then you ask about the capital items.
Yeah, the capital projects.
For the heavy equipment,
No, it's item number 907, capital projects, got a negative 9,094.91.
I don't have
I don't know
that. I don't
what
have
that
that
is.
sheet.
Do you have an extra sheet over there?
This is the budget. This is the budget.
Oh, the
Oh,
original.
that-
Oh,
that's,
We don't need to
yeah,
use
that's
that one.
been
That's
JV.
what we started with,
Okay.
and now we're adjusting.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that one's been moved out of there, so.
No wonder why you're confusing all of
Like,
us.
huh, I don't know what that is. Yeah. So heavy equipment would be the new leases that would come up. You have to put money down and then sometimes, or you're gonna cash them out or whatever. You added something on that one. You probably don't know off the top of your head what you added there.
On the heavy equipment.
Yeah.
That's where we've set the money aside. We've always kept 40,000 in there in the event that something used comes up. We would have, you know, a line to spend off of. A lot of times we just would not spend that. And so this is the extra money to
Sand
the
truck.
sand trucks, yeah, that
And
we
then the
moved
fuel
around.
trucks, yep.
Mhm.
Okay, can you run another one of these revenues real quick? Just a second.
No, it's okay. Steph's gotta leave. She's gotta go to the airport.
Don't.
I'm supposed to be there at
don't
4:30.
tell her as much.
Oh, that,
I just have some
Well, there
questions
you
on
go.
some of the other ones in the back, but we can.
Sure,
Tammy, we're
absolutely.
Going pretty quick.
Yeah, and some of the questions, so the one that you're looking at there, that's the budget prep that I submitted in
Yeah.
May. And so some of that might have been worked out in the new copy that Tammy's gonna bring out.
Well, I'm sorry, did you say something?
No, I'm talking to you.
Okay, so the answer is yes, you did say something,
Yeah.
but I didn't understand it. Well, while we're waiting on that, do we have any other questions or comments, or I can open it up for public questions? Public questions?
Oh, yeah.
Do they need to wait for Tammy or?
No.
Okay.
Department supervisors here and here. Temp wages, last time I seen, money spent on temp wages. Let's see. What do we use temp wages in the summertime for? It's not on this sheet, it's on a payroll or a report, like, Tracy.
Sure. So, what we will do from time to time is when we bring on an employee, that we're not sure of, we will bring them on in the temporary category as
So
a
like a
temp hire.
probation.
You know, we don't have a policy either way. And so it just depends on, you know, the needs right now. What we ended up doing when we hired, for down in Marble Creek back in May, we ended up bringing that on because in the interview, you know, when we had talked, he was a very good candidate, but we did not have any full-time slots open. We still had plenty of room left because of lack of applicants for wintertime temps. So we did onboard this employee for a period of like a month and a half until we actually had, you know, that position, open up. Yeah. So that's why that was sitting on in winter time.
Yeah, I'll have to get a report on that. Telephone. Are these cell phones and that, the bill we're getting off the cell phone,
Yes,
so the cell phones are county problem.
correct.
Yeah, I wonder if that's- I guess I got another question then, since looks like you bought them. You haven't spent 5,500 and you got $10,000
Which one are you looking at now?
telephone.
Oh, telephone, yeah. So the telephone is for, that is not just cell phones, that's for our phone service for all of the shops.
Okay.
That's the majority of that. As far as cell service, my phone is not reimbursed. It's just the supervisor's phone.
Give everybody was.
Solid waste.
So, let me correct. So we are not asking for solid waste fees this year. because we have not used it the last several years. In the previous discussions that I sat through since 2019, in budget talks and budget preps, with Jim Kaysen and, with the commissioners in the past, is that, our department does a lot for the solid waste department, in, helping with hauling things and, like when we put in the pad, the pad for the burner and different things like that. And we work together so much and we do contribute so much that they do not charge us for solid waste fees. And so Tammy and I had talked, it had been unutilized for the past, 4 years. It's silly to budget that every year and have it not be used. So we opted to not budget for that this year.
Striping. That was about under $7,500. Now I understand how things are.
Mm-hmm. So we've not been doing that's striping through the whole county, without the river road. And so really, it's not that we're doing all of the striping that needs to be done and we just have too much money in that line. It's just that we have not done all the striping that needs to be done. So we will exhaust that line item this year, trying to get caught up on some of the striping that's been neglected.
Like the one I brought you the other day, I think, for Kingston.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and we're gonna look at the Kingston area this year, so. And just an FYI for striping, like costs on striping, depending on who you go with, and what you have done and the quality of the paint. If you do just fog lines or just center line, it's roughly $600 or $1,650 per mile for either the center line or the fogs. If you do center line and fogs, it's double that. So you can see and that's per mile. And so you can see that the price of striping, we try to be as, we try to plan as much as we can, but,
Do we do any of that in-house?
we don't. We used to probably I think we stopped doing that roughly in 2013 or 2014, whatever that year was, where things kind of bottomed out with the budget and the funding coming in. So, at some point I'd like to see us be able to be more self-sufficient with some of that. I mean, obviously some of the roadways, the higher speed roads, with heavier traffic volume, that would be something I would probably always want to contract out. Like the striping on St. Joe River Road and Coeur d'Alene River Road.
Yeah.
But I would like to see us, see if we can't fire up some of our equipment and check availability.
We do
I
have
know
equipment.
we do, we haven't used it in a while and we need to really check on that. But we've actually talked about that over the last couple months about seeing what we can do, because we do have Shane Shigetti, our supervisor from Smelterville, was on the striping crew. We used to have a bridge crew and a striping crew and, when we had more staff.
Yeah.
So he still has the know-how. He still
Do we
has the
get
knowledge.
a discount if the striping?
Let's not revisit that again.
All right. Just curious.
You had another one, Matt?
Yes. Erosion control, we spent $15 and we're up also $5,000.
So that is one of those line items that we don't want to eliminate, and we spend it when the need arises. But it's not something that we plan for every year.
I don't think I've ever seen you spend any of that money.
I don't think we have since I've been here, Matt. I don't.
It just, the stuff that's in the budget looks like a lot of, there's a lot of fat in it. And I also think that there should be a county engineer in this budget. That's it. Thank you.
I got
Okay.
just a couple questions on that.
Sure.
The water, you have water, who
So
do we pay water to?
water is
Oh,
for the water bills. Well, and it's for the water bill for water utilities at all of our shops.
Okay,
And so that's for that. And then it is also that's where we put our, drinking water for Osborne,
okay.
because their water is at the very end of the system and it's not exactly the best for drinking. So we do provide drinking water there.
Okay, and then I have another one on vehicle repairs.
Mm-hmm.
the most we've ever spent was about 38,000 and we're requesting 50. Is that, I mean, do we
That
just
one, is that the one that Tammy just sent?
Yeah,
That's the one we went
That's the
down
one
on.
that we have old rigs and it's cost more for repairing the rigs,
Oh, wait a minute.
right? Vehicle repair.
Is that your,
Like the one you're on?
yeah, vehicle repairs, because the most we've spent was 38,000. And so
No,
that's
vehicle
what I was just
repairs.
wondering if we, is that
because I
just in
thought
case?
Tammy, and I might just be mistaken, but our last meeting, I thought we were gonna go, are we gonna go down a little bit in that because we were going up in heavy vehicle?
Or 7.5.
And I might be confused.
Nope, we went up to 50. That's what you had on your, when you gave it to me.
Oh, we were at 50 and we stayed at 50. Yeah.
So that's just in
Because of
case.
multiple.
Yeah, it's one of those things, I mean, you know, as comfortable as the board is, I'm comfortable doing, you know, whatever we think we need to do with that, if
Okay.
we want to show less because we haven't spent it. But I do caution you, look what happened to our heavy line this year.
Yeah,
And so if that
yeah.
happens with our light, then we're not budgeted for it. And I know it's kind of a fine line of, you know, you budget for something that you may never have to spend. And I know we have to be really conscious of that, but you know, just seeing what happened with our heavy line, you know, it makes me a little concerned about, you know,
Also, some of
vehicle
these
maintenance.
Areas that we're looking at, we're not at the end of our fiscal year yet. So
Correct.
there's more.
A lot of
expenses
our
coming
spending
in.
hasn't happened and a lot of those lines get spent in full during the month of September.
Well, we kind of went through it fast and I just had notes from the other.
Yeah, no, I know our budget we've got a lot of lines and it's a lot to talk
Now,
about, so.
Building and grounds, that $11,000, what did we spend that on? Is that?
That was
Yeah.
that sand or
So that one, Tammy, that's my understanding that's not normally one that we spend off of out of our department. That is for the
Rent,
That's
building.
the rent?
that
This
is rent
building.
for this building, for the road department to be in this building.
Okay, yeah, okay. For this building, okay.
which one is it? I missed it.
Rent.
And then drug
515-5.
Okay.
drug testing, we had 2,500, the most we spent was 1,700, so.
Yeah,
They're going.
We're gonna go, yeah, yep, we're gonna,
Now we have new people in the road department
Yeah.
or in the sheriff's office, they do the drug testing, and when we get the new provider here that can do that, we can have them do the road departments too and save them there.
and our drug testing, our department as well as solid waste, because of the CDL license.
Yeah.
We are in a random pool, and so every quarter we get a new batch of randomly selected employees that we have to send down immediately for drug testing.
And then safety equipment, what would that, just your general helmet?
Yeah, safety glasses, you know, earplugs, all the,
Okay.
anything that would be for safety of the guys.
Liquid de-icer, so we only used 50% of what we had last year.
That's one that we will
Probably
do a
that's
purchase
gone up.
at the end of fiscal year. Yep.
Okay. Okay,
Yep, and that's
it's
one
probably
of those
not-
things that, you know,
it went up.
mag is very expensive and it does continue
rise.
to rise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Depending on our winter too.
Yeah, I mean,
We
we
might
could
have
have
a
a
mild
lighter
one.
winter. It depends on the freeze, because if it's too cold, you can't use mag. You know, it's gotta be the optimal temperatures. And so if last year, you know, we had those jags of like a month of 0 degree, you know, and then it would warm up a little bit. So you will see the usage fluctuate a little bit in that depending on the winter we have.
And fire extinguishers?
That is, you know, that's something where we have our fire extinguisher serviced every
Okay.
year,
you
and,
have one in every
yeah, we're
vehicle?
not due for that yet. We're just coming up, I think, this month, so.
Okay. And
Probably have them in the shops too.
propane is
Yep.
probably for your paver?
We've got a few different things. The reason we don't have much on there is, you know, just certain things that run off of a propane tank, and so we don't spend much in
Okay.
propane.
Just looking at some other stuff, just question to see where things went.
Sure, absolutely.
And chip oil, You're probably gonna buy that at the end of the year too?
Yep, because we're planning on shipping this year, so we have not purchased that yet.
Flood repairs.
That is one that you can never anticipate a flood or plan when it's going to happen. We like to keep something there in the event that happens, but, we, knock on wood, since I've been here since 2019, we haven't had much to address as far as flooding.
Okay, and then anyway, the money that comes in here has to stay in here because it's,
Correct. The highway user
Yeah.
revenue
It can't
and
go
the
anywhere else.
SRS, it can only be used by the road department.
okay.
Any other questions?
Do you want to look at the revenue or?
Oh, I was actually looking at it while we were,
So basically, we anticipate we'll get more in utility, permits. We'll get more in grant, or less actually in grant income, because we don't know what that will be yet. Hopefully we'll get more than that. We don't do taxes, like I said, capital improvement, we always get some in that fund. We budgeted 6,000 last year, got 68,000, you just never know. Ground rent, that's the renting for the signs that we have in our yards, highway user revenue. We put that as the same, and Title I, which is SRS, the road apportionment. That's good. Mhm.
so. We anticipate then 4228. 500 coming in for income. But we're anticipating 4248 for outgoing.
So they'll be using cash for their fund balance. In
Okay.
every department.
So I
Well, they
did.
don't all have some.
I did after budget, we went to the Silver Valley Transportation Team meeting. Layla Crawl, the administrator, for LTAC, was there to give some updates. And so we are expected to end up with more payment through the highway user revenue through some of their combined general fund. It's the state general fund. It's not our general fund. So it still goes into highway user. And then the sales tax, the percentage that we get off of that. There's a new TECM, that went through legislation this year that we'll get a small amount from. So what we're looking at for our projected is 4461, 362. And it's kind of one of those things that, if they could just give us a printout, you're for sure getting this year, it would be really easy for us. But given the projections and what we're looking at, what we're being told, what the Idaho Association of Counties has told us, that's right where we think we're gonna be this year.
We get a lot of those things through reports that say this is what we're anticipating, but don't use it for your budget.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah,
you're supposed
that's not
to say
gonna
it, kind of make your best guess on what it might be.
Yeah.
Get that at my house a lot.
Mhm.
Okay. Any further questions?
Yes, so the stuff that we don't spend, when we get down to the end, we don't
Mhm.
spend in the budget, it just rolls over
No,
into the same fund next year.
It
in
stays
your
in the road
fund
cash.
balance. It's in your fund balance. And your fund balance can be used to offset expenses in the next year. If you choose to do that,
On
but
this,
it doesn't
Afterwards,
roll
yeah.
over. It's not a rollover thing, so if it's in your fund balance, it can be spent for anything to make up for something.
make up for something next
Right,
next year.
like if you budgeted for a car, and you didn't buy the car, and you saved 50,000,
Mhm.
that 50,000, if you didn't spend it somewhere else, because it's a bottom line budget, then that would add to your fund balance. And then that fund balance is used every year to make up the difference and bring it down so that your budget is balanced, so.
Okay.
So when I mean rollover,
Or
it's
if
not
I
rolling
need to
over to
buy it
that
down
line.
for levy, you know,
Mhm.
to meet a levy, we'll use some cash that we might have. But then again, we have to have a reserve amount. And that's what that fund balance does for us, is allows us to have.
And so that'll be something that we'll probably
Carry
start
over.
talking about in budget prep for next year. We're not gonna have any bridge match coming up next year because that's gonna be City of Pinehurst as their construction year, so they're handling their own match for that. But the following year, we're gonna get into the West Fork rehabilitation, and we are going to have some match on that. So we're gonna need to plan ahead. And that's where I will probably start my talks with Tammy early and say, what do we look like? You know, in that reserve back there. And then that'll be something that we'll talk about in, you know, the time for budget prep. Because we need to make sure that we have that match, so we can pay that match to go into construction. We don't lose our slot in the federal aid funding for bridge. So we're gonna have West Fork that year. And then, a bigger match on the complete replacement of Pine Creek the following year. So, but for this year, moving into next year's planning, we are not gonna have any federal aid match. We're not gonna have any bridges going in for our jurisdiction.
Right? Any further discussion?
At this
At
point,
this point,
I'd like to go over your employee stuff with you.
Yeah.
When, we'll do it. I'll meet with you later on that.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
There was an updated one.
There's an updated one? Okay.
Yeah, I had a couple of typos and I take full credit for that.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else, Madam Clerk? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
All right.